Well, interestingly, anytime you put a product on hold for any length of time, there's a huge risk associated with that because this industry moves so fast. The things you were targeting, 9 months earlier, like hardware platforms, things of that nature, are gone, or are dwarfed quickly. Interestingly, we had something very fortunate happen with Ultima IX, which is Ultima IX, even before this hiatus, was a 3D game, but the camera perspective was a 3/4 view down from above parallel projection engine, and there was a reason why we did that. And fundamentally the reason why we kept a constant camera pitch as well as no parallax in the camera was so that as the world moved, we could re-render only the strip of the world that was coming into view. Well, even with that kind of fixed camera pitch and kind of strip rendering, the amount of polygon count that we were trying to keep cramming through that software renderer was taxing our ability to get a frame rate that was even remotely reasonable. What we've done in the last 9 months is we said, fortunately for us, hardware has come along and saved the day. So we actually think that we've become very fortunate that we are now the right combination of high polygon count, super detailed, rich world, and now the hardware has caught up to us and will let us do the game the way it should have been done in the first place. So our camera is now back into free moving. We've got parallel. It's a full 3D perspective game. Everything within the game is polygonal, and no sunflowering, sprites of any kind. And the object density is a full Ultima. So it's the immersiveness of this game, the depth of the simulation and the presentation, we think is far superior to any other game in existence. Yeah, I think there was an influence from the fact that people participated in UO, but it actually is very different than you might anticipate. If anything, it was actually the opposite of what you suggested. One of my personal critiques of the last few Ultimas, though I have felt they've been fabulous world simulations, like for example, I think Ultima VII was by far the best world simulation in the sense of you could do anything and everything in that game, and you could literally go from any raw material and create the final good of. And by the way, Ultima Online is that way too. I actually think Ultima VII was in some ways more elegant in its execution of those. It doesn't have as many as UO did, but in any case, you get the idea. Ultima VII was a great virtual world, and I think many of the recent few Ultimas have had great kind of epic high concepts and events that can transpire within them. However, one of my critiques of those Ultimas, and kind of hindsight analysis, and was learning that we could even take from UO, is that it's important to also make sure, especially in a solo player game, that what you need to do at any moment is very clear, that the challenges are well sequenced from easy to harder, that at the completion of each challenge cycle is an appropriate a heavily celebrated or appropriately celebrated reward. And Ultimas, as they went from 4 through 7 anyway, and became better and better simulations, became more and more what you might describe as chaotic in their storyline execution. And that was exemplified in UO, which of course had no possibility of having tight storyline execution, but that really kind of made us, that experience kind of made us look back at Ultima IX and go, we really ought to, Ultima IX really has the opportunity to tell this compelling story that we had, that we already had, but we've been fine-tuning it to be a more and more, punchy all the way through the total experience versus more and more open-ended.
What the Ultima fans have to look forward to is a more immersive Ultima, is an Ultima where they really can feel like they're really walking amongst the streets of the town, and where they can really feel like they're affecting the world in a more visceral way. They're closer than they've ever been before to the avatar. Before it's always been above or distant. The avatar's always been a sprite that was about 1.5 inches tall on the screen or less. And I think the closer you get, the closer in emotion you feel to what's going on. And I think that's really a lot of what role-playing is about feeling like you're part of that world, you know. And I don't want to, you know, throw buzzwords in like virtual world and all that, because I don't know that I think the coolest part of playing a role-playing game is being heroic. And what does that mean really? Well, that means emotion. That's not virtual world. Virtual world is I can knock the bottle off the table and it falls off and hits the ground and breaks. But if there's a cat there, it hits the cat and scares the cat and doesn't break. Mm-hmm. You know, that's a virtual world. But, you know, to me, hitting the bottle off the thing is not as important as being able to, you know, save the princess from the tower, kill the dragon, cast these spells that just blow, you know, huge chunks of walls, you know, off the dungeon. And those are the things I think the player really wants to play. And I think that's what we bring to Ultima is that understanding and that level of emotional tie.
I think that is precisely why Ultima, you know, the Ultima series has survived now, coming up on 20 years. And it's interesting to see how those started, because it wasn't, you know, back in 1979, that wasn't the plan, if you know what I mean. It happened. But why it happened is kind of easy to see. So you see this pattern that emerged was the throw it away and start over, which was not done for any market reasons, was not done for any real reason other than the clear, you know, it was the only process that made any sense, because there was no practical other option. On the other hand, after kind of retelling the go kill the evil wizard story, you know, for quite a few years there, as most role-playing games still do, you know, I was quite frankly tired of it. And that's when we began kind of this much more care towards storytelling. And so Ultima 4, I really think, is kind of the turning point in the Ultima series, where it went from being just a fun game to being a really meaningful game, maybe one that has, you know, quote, lasting value, unquote. And when I was doing Ultima 4, it wasn't clear to me that it would work at all, in the sense of I actually thought, you know, this game could really flop because it of the kind of content, the direction I was taking this fictional content. Interestingly, it was the very first ever best-selling Ultima, so it was obviously not the wrong thing to do. But ever since then, that's been something we've taken very good care to craft, is both take a lot of care to the fictional content as well as push that technology envelope as far as possible. And in particular, one of the ways we accomplish it is exemplified by a scene in Ultima 5. And to this day, when I talk with the team and especially the designers, I use this example as saying, you know, this is the kind of thing everyone on the team needs to be looking for opportunities to do. The first few Ultimas could be, their technology basis could be measured by how many tiles the game had. So like Ultima 1 had 16 tiles with which to create the world, then 32, then 64, then 128, then 256, then 512, and it literally doubled each time between Ultimas. Well, in Ultima 5 was the first time we had enough tiles to begin to put furniture in the world. And so as opposed to just having boxes for everything, now suddenly, you know, you could put a table and a chair and, you know, and we sit around a harpsichord. And so we built this, and drew this little piano kind of shape. Well, as soon as we created the art, then we sat back and said, well, you know, we really ought to be able to use it, make it make noise. And then we said, yes, we did. So when you walk up to it, if you hit number keys, it would go ting, 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 ting. Then we said, you know, now that it can make noise, we ought to make that do something. I mean, it ought, you know, there ought to be some point to making some noise. And so then we said, okay, and we came up with this kind of elaborate plot element for it, where we put, for example, in the documentation, a piece of medieval notation sheet music. We put a character in the game, and that would tell you which number key each of those lines and spaces was accommodated. Then we put another character in the game and said, hey, by the way, that was Lord British's favorite piece of music. And then we put another person in the game who said, you know, I heard this rumor that Lord British had this magical harpsichord that if you played some piece of music on it, something magical would happen. And so if you go to that particular harpsichord, play this piece of music, the walls rumble and a secret door opens to give you one of the major artifacts needed in the game. Well, so you get the idea is that they couldn't have really been pre-designed successfully. You get the idea. Those are the ways the technology and design have to be really tightly integrated with these subtle but important links.
I really do believe that the main reason why we didn't do a party is because I didn't think we could do it justice. You know, I wanted to make sure that if we were going to do a party, we're going to do it right. Because a party's a really, really important thing. Yeah. And, you know, this isn't a turn-based party. You know, this isn't a party that absorbs into your character while you're walking. You know, this is a party that would have to be either, you know, Richard was very clear on matters like this. It has to either be living and breathing as a party and really a party, or let's not do it. Because what's really important here is that D&D feel, you know, if that's trademarked, I apologize, TSR. And so I think that, you know, to put it succinctly, the technology isn't there yet to support parties properly, because they need a level of AI that hasn't been seen yet. And they need a level of, not just AI, but they need a level of connectivity that is hard to do too. I mean, for example, you know, if all of these people, if you go down this path, let's say we can do it AI-wise. Let's say they can all find path and they can all be behind you all the time. Well, and let's say they always pick the perfect attack to make. You know, it's like, the fact is that in and of itself is Herculean to impossible currently. You know, because there's always something you're going to want them to do, something that your human mind is going to conceive of, combinations of attacks that you're going to want to synchronize that they're not going to think of as being their own individual entities. And there's no way to connect them to your brain currently, you know? And so until we can be confident that there is the right balance of limitation to advantage to having this, you know, we really don't want to do it, because they're not just supposed to be extra guns, you know, extra guns clipped to your wings. That's not the idea of a party. The feeling of a party is, what's cool about a party is like what they did in Chrono Trigger, where they had like combined attacks, you know, that together, you know, made really, really cool combinations of things. That was what was cool about a D&D party. It's like you had a thief, and the thief did things, and you had a magic user, and the magic user did things, and they didn't cross paths. You know, they combined themselves. Okay, the magic user casts invisibility on the thief, and the thief goes around and backstabs. And those are the cool combos that a party does well. And until we have that series until we create an AI that's that sophisticated and an interface to handle it well from one mind, it's going to be very hard to do a party properly and not make it seem lame.
I am now kind of the executive designer of Ultima IX. Even for my group, which is called Lord British Productions, which is Ultima Online and Ultima IX, we're now looking to hire a business manager for the entire group to take me out of the Origin executive commitments that I otherwise would have. So I'm really trying to avoid getting caught up in the company growth, you know, because I mean, because as we do things like, not only do we want to do Ultima Online and Ultima IX, we want to do Ultima. We think is one of the most valuable properties in the industry. So you could think of, I could have a job of running that whole business, but it would mean I would never be involved in game design. I mean, it was quickly evolving that direction. So I'm now kind of discarding the mantle of authority within even my own group, so that I can get in and stay at the designer level, which I think is an area, well, I know is an area I enjoy better, and importantly is also an area which I think will help me succeed as an individual, but also will help the products and the company succeed.
You know, one of the things I and one of the new designers were really pushing for was the idea that, you know what, you should be able to play this game and be good or bad. And you should be able to become bad and get benefits for being, well, not benefits, but perhaps you should be able to follow that path and be bad and play the whole game through and being bad. And that would have opened up an entire area of possibilities, an entire realm of a huge branch, basically, which you could get your way out of. So it created this huge structure that we were like looking at. And when Richard got a hold of it, he was like, wait a minute. I see what you're doing, and I see why you're doing it. There are some really cool game elements here, which I would like to implement, but you need to understand, and I hope this doesn't turn off, you know, your reader or our buyer, but, you know, one of the things about Ultima, and especially about the sequence of Avatar stuff, is that you are the paradigm of virtue, and that Richard really doesn't agree with the concept of teaching people that being bad is okay. And he does believe that there is enough shades of gray within good that we don't have to delve into the whole side of being evil and deal with those shades of gray. You know, are you the anti-hero? Are you the real true villain? You know, do you replace the Guardian? I don't think it hampers gameplay. I saw every one of the cool elements that we wanted. Oh, we really want this to happen when the guy's evil. And I said, well, that can happen when he's good too. And it was hard sometimes, but we were able to implement the core coolness of what was happening there into the story without having to make him a bad guy. And that's just a rule. And that's part of the reason why Richard is okay with bringing this to a close. He's okay with it because we've done this. I mean, we've been true to ourselves. It's time we open up our minds again to the complete realm of possibilities of what could be the next iteration of Ultimas. But at the same time, this Ultima is not the place for that.
A couple of the major thematic goals of this project are first of all, probably number one is immersiveness. Right. In the sense of we've worked very hard to make sure that the world we are creating is as hyper-realistic as possible. In the sense of not only the visuals complete, in the sense of even 2D Ultimas we're trying to be pretty complete, but that's particularly hard to do in 3D. And so I think you'll find that we are by far the most complete 3D thing ever. But also all the subtle touches that make reality real. Like we can hear that hum of the fan a little bit over there. The space we're in has slightly different acoustics. There are sound cues in the real world that are spatially presented. And you'll notice we have put you in a room which has surround sound here for a reason. Because, for example, even our sound effects are fully three-dimensional, spatially placed that will enhance that perception. Subtle things like movement. We'll give you a little demo of. We have a physics model which has a lot of subtlety to it. So, for example, as wind blows through the world, things which hang like signs or ducks in the meat seller's place, or the person drying flowers on a vine, or clothes, all kind of blow and rock in the breeze. The water all kind of undulates and even can become more wavy at appropriate times or not. The water's all translucent. You get the idea. The world is full of motion and sound and sensation that we think that'll amplify that immersive feel. We even actually have it running in 3D. We've got the 3D goggles up there you can put on to watch the world in 3D. So number one is immersive. Mm-hmm. Number two is what I'll call fine control and feedback. Like a game I love to watch being played is Tomb Raider. Yeah. However, I just bought a PSX the other day and bought Tomb Raider 2, and I can't play it. Which saddens me because I love to watch it. We are not creating an arcade game. However, what we're extracting from the learning of those games is the movement of, especially from like Tomb Raider, I think is an excellent example of the movement of the character through the geometry of the world in such a way that makes your character feel and experience the geometry very realistically. So what we're trying to do, and I think we have now created, is give you a control mechanism which is much more akin to point and go, much more easy to handle conceptually, but still lets you experience the geometry of the world in a very hands-on way. And our character is not only designed to be fluid, but will ultimately be what you might consider gymnastic, to where it is cool and fun to watch yourself experience that geometry. So that's kind of number two. I touched on that kind of challenge and reward cycle earlier, where Ultimas have always had a lot of cool stuff in them. You just had to take the time to go find it. And one of the things we're doing with this Ultima is we're really taking all that same very rich depth of content and making sure that, especially early in the game, that we provide you clear understanding of what to do, clear understanding of your goals and objectives, and making sure we pace them in a way which is appropriate. So, for example, the first dungeon is really a tutorial of interface. I mean, it's really literally. I mean, we'll have literally, voiceover. Click on this. Press the right button. Kind of really make sure people really get it. So that part of it is very easy. then the first challenges you face are appropriately paced to make sure that you can accomplish them. Then when you accomplish those, the reward is really present much more rapidly, which is, again, a cue we've taken from a lot of the console games. I think console games have historically done a great job of having good kind of challenge reward cycles going for them. So we've kind of tailored our fictional content in that way. Then what is really going to make Ultima stand out from the already very limited pack I've described is the fact that it's an Ultima, in the sense of it is epic. The goal of this game, what you get to do as a player, we think really has the kind of the social, the personal soul searching you'll do as you go through this is going to be unseen in games which are not Ultimas. And we believe we have an incredibly compelling kind of mental growth cycle for you to go on that ends in a truly epic resolution that is fitting for the end of the trilogy of trilogies of the longest running fantasy game in the history of computer games. So that's how we're going to do it.